My name's Paul Judge. I'm a graduate of Washinton, 1968. I was a member of Colin Covey's social studies class in which Roosevelt Thomas and myself and other classmates, Roosevelt was the BSU president at the time, discussed this matter. This is 1968. Please remember what was going on. We talked about the struggle against the war in Vietnam. Martin Luther King was murdered. Robert Kennedy is murdered. Dewey Crumpler is correct. There is a poverty of education in this matter that goes through the school system. My father, at 8 years of age, when I was 8 years of age, took me through that lobby. And as a longshoreman with a San Francisco high school education, pointed out the poignant scenes.
My name is Toba Singer. I'm a retired senior co-director of the San Francisco Public Library Art and Music Center. And I want to say that art is a cultural expression and often the only record of social history for working people. That history is drenched in blood. The price we pay for standing up to wrench any modicum of power and dignity from the exploiting class. It's of no consequence whether we call the call to disguise that fact comes from the so-called left or right. The antiseptic outcome is the same. Our true history is sanitized, distorted, wholly erased. This time to assuage those who claim to be more evolved in their sensibilities, but ultimately serving to wipe out the true record of the class that exploits and oppresses. As a worker, as a librarian, I oppose the censorship attack on the artistic patrimony of San Francisco, including against its children, and specifically those of the working class, the most oppressed of its members. We have a right to know our social origins as much from the art as through the oral history and written word.
Steve Zeltzer, United Public Workers for Education. First of all, to allow only an hour for all of us to discuss this is wrong. We should at least have 2 hours. But what I find astounding, and I asked some of the supporters of taking down the mural, is that there's no information at Washington High about what these murals are. How could that be? That there's no explanation. That's on you. That's on this Board of Education. Why hasn't there been education about these murals? No wonder the students are unhappy. I mean, I think you have to learn about it. Frankly, what I'm in favor of is a Native American Cultural Center at the school to have education about the murals and the real history. Instead of spending $1 million and millions more if there's a suit fighting this, let's have some real education. And frankly, the school district and the superintendent have allowed racism in San Francisco. They allowed bullying at Martin Luther King Junior High School, middle school. They allowed the breakup of Malcolm X Academy with the KIPP charter. That's racism, right here in San Francisco. And where was this Board of Education there? Where were they fighting the privatization and the busting, the racist attacks on the schools?
Socialist Workers' Party candidate for mayor of San Francisco. I'm speaking in opposition to the destruction of the Life of Washington mural at George Washington High School. I join with others, including members of the school's Alumni Association, in opposing the destruction of the mural portraying the life of George Washington. Destroying or covering it would be an act of censorship and a blow to freedom of expression that would set a precedent for further such actions. The charge that the mural is a glorification of slavery and the genocide of Native Americans is false. In portraying George Washington, Victor Arnautoff sought to present him with all his contradictions, someone who played a leading role in the American Revolution, while at the same time owning slaves and pushing for settlement of Western lands that led to the genocide of Native Americans.
My name is Amy Meyer. I was formerly an art teacher. And I care very much about those murals because they are most remarkable and give the opportunity to give an art education experience that can hardly take place anywhere else. It's the history of George Washington ranging from the cherry tree to Valley Forge. But then that history gets interpreted and reinterpreted over the years, and the layers are there to see or to learn about. We have a tremendous valuable resource there, and it should be worked fully into the curriculum of George Washington High School.
My name is Andrea Morel. I'm a longtime resident of the Bay Area and a member of the Socialist Workers' Party. There's a trend today among liberals and even some who claim to be socialists of attacks on freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and freedom of artistic expression. The attempt to destroy the mural at Washington High School is part of this destructive trend, in this case in the name of shielding Native American and African American youth from harm. But effacing this mural and similar acts have nothing to do with the fight to eradicate exploitation and racial oppression. Instead, they undermine the fight. Battles for social and economic justice need to be waged in this country, and we face powerful enemies who profit from the inequality in this society and aren't about to let it go. We need the most robust freedom of ideas to discuss, debate what will be effective and what will not. We cannot allow it to become a norm that some of us can decide for all of us which ideas, whether words or images, are acceptable and which have to be suppressed.
My name is Raul Gonzalez. In 1969 and 1970, I was a student at Mission High School in San Francisco. I was active in the fight against the war in Vietnam, and I was active in the fight for Chicano rights. Myself and one other formed the first organization citywide on the high schools in San Francisco against the war in Vietnam. The mural tells in part the story of the conquest and colonization of the United States, including the genocide of Native Americans. The mural reminds us that this nation was born in blood and gore. The mural also tells of the creations of this world's first victorious anti-colonial revolution. That was the American Revolution, a revolution that inspired similar revolutions throughout the Americas against Spain. The artist that painted the mural at George Washington High School was inspired by the muralism that was born with the Mexican Revolution of 1910. He worked with Diego Rivera, whose murals portrayed the oppression of indigenous people.
My name is Tamanka. I'm a teacher of the Oklahoma Choctaw language. I'm against taking those murals down for one reason only. It's a history. It's a visual proven fact that it's a proven fact that George Washington was partaking in a genocide of our people. It's depicted in those pictures. Just like Eisenhower commissioned to take pictures of the Holocaust to prove that this really happened. That's what those murals represent as a Native person. It shows he was one who was involved in getting rid and genociding our First Nation people. He was a slave owner. How are you going to prove that if you take those down? By word of mouth? That's not going to work, because we already see where we're at now, just by saying these things happened.
My name is Marianne Phillip, and I have been a teacher at Washington High School for over 20 years. I'm also currently the librarian at Washington. I had a little difficulty when they asked me whether I was for or against covering up the murals, because I don't feel like there's been enough discussion, enough education, enough time to really treat this important issue the way it needs to be treated. I didn't find out that there was going to be a committee until our principal said, hey, we need some students for this committee. And I'm like, what committee? It was going to be a closed committee of only 11 people, and then they opened it up for the public to come. I was at 3 of those 4 meetings. One meeting I was sick, so I couldn't attend. However, at the beginning of this discussion, it was said that the community overwhelmingly supports covering the murals, but I don't know that we've overwhelmingly heard from the whole community.
My name is Donna Parker. My mother was an American Indian. Her reservation was given blankets with TB spores in the 1920s. She died of lung cancer because she couldn't have chemo because of those spores. I never was taught that in school, and I went through the public schools in San Francisco. In San Francisco, we should be teaching about the mural and what it means. I, as a half Native American Indian, see no problem with the mural. It depicts what happened. Everything was whitewashed when I went through school. You know, Native American lives matter. Black lives matter. Every life matters, but you have to know the history.
My name is George Wright, and I'm a professor emeritus from California State University, Chico. Taught political science for about 34 years there. Started teaching black politics in the United States back in 1968. And I've been living in San Francisco the last 16 years. I want to associate myself with every remark that's been made on this side of the aisle today. What I just simply want to add is kind of an academic perspective to this. I associate myself with a group of historians and political scientists coming out of the late 50s and into the 60s. Kenneth Stamp, Eugene Genovese, obviously W.E.B. Du Bois, Lerone Bennett, etc., who attempted to revise history to tell the truth about what happened in history. When I went to school, George Washington had just simply chopped down a cherry tree. It took me until I became a professor and I had to read books and learn what real history was about.